Book 8, The Last Day, Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is actually a collection of a number of end-of-book segments. We'll just call them that. The first one is called Last Piece of Pie. Next is Centuries Later. Then there is Epilogue. Then there is Author's Notes, 5 points. Mari, where's the last piece of pie? It should be in the cabinet. It's not. It should be, Perrin. Why are you looking for it anyway? You're not planning to have pie for breakfast again, are you? Why not? It's mostly berries, after all. Berries are good for breakfast. Not drenched in sugar. Mari, what does it matter? I can eat anything I want for breakfast. It's not a very good example to your great-grandchildren. What are you teaching them? That when you get a perfected body, you can eat pie for breakfast. Perrin, we've been through this. Pie for breakfast isn't any better than cheesecake. Why not? I still don't see what's wrong with cheesecake for breakfast. It's cheese and eggs. Might as well be an omelet. Omelets aren't saturated in sugar. They could be, Mari. They could be. I can get you something better to eat. Pie is fine, if I can find that last piece. Well, it was in there last night on the plate. On a plate? Not the tin? No, I took it out of the tin to wash it. It was on a plate in the cabinet. Oh. Perrin? Yes? Did you eat the piece of pie on the plate last night? No, not at all. Perrin? My father ate it. Ralph ate it? Yes, when he came over last night. I mentioned how good the new berries were this season, and, well, I thought the piece on the plate was your piece. So you gave Ralph what you thought was my piece, but it was actually your breakfast? Seems that way, doesn't it? Serves you right for being generous with my pie. At least he enjoyed it. Don't worry, I have something else. Oh, Mari, what is that? Breakfast pie. My mother brought it over earlier. It's a new experiment. She knows how you like to sneak pie for breakfast. The boys loved it. This doesn't look right. Sure it does. It's eggs and cheese and pie crust. She calls it quiche. Any sugar? Of course not, Perrin. It's like pie omelet. Just what you wanted. No sugar? Sounds like it's not living up to its potential. Mari, I really don't think I can eat that. Just try it. Joriana had some yesterday and said it was very good. Now I see why my father came over for the berry pie. Come on, just one bite. Why can't your mother name things that sound more appetizing, like burrito? That sounds appetizing. Sounds like a donkey disease. Come on, Perrin, just one bite. One bite. Well, needs sugar and many other different ingredients like berries, and no eggs or cheese or... Are those onions? She ruined it with the onions. There is no room in pie for onions. This is just wrong. Where are you going? To get some real pie. And where is that? Hogle and Tabbitt's. Tabbit knows how to feed a shin man pie. My parents went over there right after they came here. My mother had a few more quiches with her. Oh, poor Hogle. We better hurry. Mari, are you coming? Always. Centuries later. Sometime later, no one bothered to count the centuries because after a while you realize it doesn't matter how long it takes, just that it takes. Mari sat on her back porch as the light slowly dimmed. Before her was the endless meadow where Perrin's favorite herd of zebras were bedding down for the evening. A grizzly bear meandered through them, nodding to the herd on her way to her cave, just inside the edge of the trees. The zebras chortled her a good night. Mari didn't watch them alone. On the stairs was her company for the evening. One of the men seated a couple of steps down chatted easily. Qualipohili had been there before, perhaps thousands of times, talking over old times, sharing stories of now, and discussing plans for the future. But joining them tonight and positioned stiffly on the bottom step was someone new. And despite the encouraging smiles of Mari and the gentle prodding of Poe, he spoke haltingly, worriedly. Still, he persevered because he recently had made promises and he wasn't about to break any of them. And so, very slowly, he became less tense as he related stories which, back in Edge, hadn't been at all amusing. But with the passing of centuries and the perspective of eternity, they took on a different tone, so much so that he found himself smiling as he related them. And on more than one occasion, Mari laughed, and so did Pohili. And finally, without being able to stop himself, so did Lemuel Thorne. At the edge of the meadow was a forest, trees of all varieties intertwined, trees which in the world wouldn't have grown together, but here climate didn't matter. So while some argued it was more of a jungle, Perrin still called it the forest at the edge of my meadow. Underneath the thick boughs which canopied him, he watched. A grizzly ambled past him with a grunt of acknowledgment, which Perrin almost forgot to return, until the sow rubbed up against him, nearly knocking him off his feet. An attention-getting trick she'd learned from the cat. But Perrin couldn't pull his eyes away from the scene playing out before him. From the trees he watched as the three of them chatted, then laughed. And he marveled, and he wept, and finally he got to say, "Welcome home, son." Epilogue. And so the land rested. A few well-placed land tremors took down the rest of the buildings, but not until after some artifacts were recovered. Books, writings, journals, paintings, a wide beam with the words Shinbrighter Zenas Estates carved on it. Then everything grew over again. Rivers flooded, trees multiplied, forests reclaimed their lands. A crater filled itself with a new mountain. A large hill eroded. The earth reset itself. But ruins and carvings remained. And then that world was ready again. An eon and 2 epochs later, plus or minus a million years, if time were measured there, the Creator watched as they took their places. The Nurturer ushered in the last of them and nodded to the Creator that all were present. The Creator looked at the entities who sat before him. They had no beginning, they had no end, but they most certainly had a middle. And now in that middle they were facing, as we would perceive it if we were to observe that realm, their placement exam, deciding the next several eons of their progression. This was not the first assessment the entities had prepared for, with figurative hand-wringing and last-minute meditations and fits of anxiety, nor would it be the last. But this exam was the most decisive one. The creator of the test, the organizer of their cosmos, and the father of them all had called together his vast array of intelligent beings to the ethereal testing center, located in an unspecified corner of the galaxy. The entities were fresh with the glow from their nurturer and the mother of them all, and her messages, which would have translated to a kiss on the cheek, a squeeze of reassurance, an encouragement such as, "You have worked so hard, I know you will do well," and "I have faith in you," as well as additional reminders such as, "Be good to each other," and "Remember who you are." They had been anticipating this moment, the revelation of what kind of test to expect. Many came prepared with the metaphorical number 2 pencils and pages with circles, waiting to be filled in thoroughly and fretting if they should have brought blue books as well. Others reviewed lessons and quizzed their siblings. A few more squirmed and chewed on what would have been fingernails were they corporeal. And still others sat rigidly and looked at their Creator to hide their apprehension. The Creator leaned back on his cosmic chalkboard with a calm smile and regarded his beloved charges. They had come as far as they could and learned as much as possible. They were ready for the next challenge. He made a noise equivalent to one gently clearing his throat, and all beings looked to him instantly. My children, I am pleased to present to you your new test. It will be unlike anything you have ever experienced before. He radiated light and hope. It will be glorious, and it will be terrifying. You will find love, and you will find loneliness. You will learn what you can become and what you already are. The combined silence of millions of thoughts trying to comprehend the magnitude of these unfamiliar words quieted the cosmos. The Creator continued, "This is not to be a test of theories and knowledge, but a test of application and will." Somewhere a metaphorical pencil snapped in two, and a few erasers were nervously bitten off and chewed. "How do we prepare?" asked a hesitant voice. "You are already prepared, my son." "How will we be evaluated?" "By what you choose to do with every thought and option placed before you, my daughter." One of the sons stood up. "Will everyone pass the test?" The Creator had been waiting for him to rise. In the back, the nurturer lifted her chin slightly. She'd anticipated this too. "The test is designed to allow all to succeed," the Creator told this son and all the others. "It is our will that all of you do. It is to be open note, and I will even give you the notes. I will also start the test with you before leaving you on your own. You can all succeed." He smiled at them. A sense of relief filled the region. But the son was not finished. The Creator knew he would not be. "But some will fail, will they not? That is the purpose of a test, to have some fail." He regarded him sadly. "Yes, some will fail. That is not a fault of the test, and it is also not its purpose. Failure need not be permanent. It means only that the lesson has not yet been learned correctly and must be attempted again." The son folded his arms. "If this test is the most important," he glanced at his siblings, "then why not make it so that we cannot fail, so that everyone succeeds?" Some nodded in agreement, while others furrowed their eyebrows in dismay. The nurturer looked at the Creator with the message, "It's happening." "Yes, it is," he sent back. "And just as it should." Her gaze shifted to see another son take to his feet. She had expected this. "But, Father, is not the test an examination of our will, our ability to choose?" The Creator nodded encouragingly at the son. He was a great one. The son continued, "Then designing it for unequivocal success would destroy its purpose. It would destroy the test itself." He turned to his brother. "It cannot be anything but what the Creator has designed. We have to trust the test." His skeptical brother eyed him. "There must be other ways." His voice trailed off as his brother shook his head. The Creator had not been surprised by this exchange, but had expected it, and was counting on it. In truth, nothing surprised him, for he knew it all, and this knowledge guided his creation of the test. As it always happens. "You may each succeed," he repeated, "for I will give you the answers and the help you need. All you must do is ask for help, but I cannot give you help unless you ask for it." Some of them smiled in understanding. Others looked at him with hope. Only a few still seemed doubtful. "It will not be a fair test," declared the son, still standing with arms folded. "We're all so different. How can one test fairly assess each of us?" The Creator waited for his other son to respond. "It will be fair," he began. Then the great son thought and added, "But it will not be equal. Each of us will experience something different, but it will be exactly what each of us needs." He looked to the Creator for confirmation. The Creator smiled. Another voice asked, "So are we to prove ourselves to you?" "You have nothing to prove to me," the Creator said kindly to a daughter. "This test is for you. You are to prove yourself to yourself." The skeptical son shook his head, but a sense of understanding permeated the space. "You will not be tested here, but on a place your nurturer and I have created for you. And you will all have a turn there, in one form or another. Your involvement in the test will change over time, but you will always be there. Even though there is space enough and to spare on the world I have created, your physical existences will be limited in time." Understanding vanished, as new words such as world and time and physical mystified them. But the Creator merely nodded. "You will come to understand," he assured. "The real challenge is this: while you are in the test, you will not remember me, nor your nurturer, nor your existence with us." A collective gasp resonated in the universe. The skeptical son threw his arms up into what would have been the air. "It is not fair!" "It will be fair," the Creator promised in his steady and compassionate tone. "I will spend a period with you there, to teach you and give you writings to guide you. It will be filled with the same knowledge your nurturer has already given you. Then I will leave, but I will never be far. You can help each other, but I also give you this promise. As you progress in that sphere, you will begin to remember some of what we have temporarily caused you to forget. As you choose to come closer to me, I will then be able to come closer to you. But you may also choose differently. You may choose to move away from me instead, to forget even what you learn in that sphere." His gentle voice developed an edge of warning. "If you do move away from what you have learned, you will find only darkness and sorrow. But you also do not need to stay in darkness." His voice softened again. "You may change your direction, and you may even progress to a time when you can hear again my voice and receive my guidance, if that is what you choose." A murmur of discussion passed among the beings. "You choose to succeed or fail. And when you fail, you may try again and again until the test is over. Our Savior, who has already gone through this test in another world, has paved the way for you to repent and come back to us. He has already shown this will work. It worked on all other spheres and with all other generations. This is the plan." The Creator looked at his great son, who first understood the purpose. "Will you take the test?" he asked him. His son nodded. "I will, and I will help all others that I can." The Creator expected this and was pleased. He also knew what would come next. He turned to his skeptical son. "Will you take the test?" His son shook his head. "I have no faith in the plan." He looked at his brother. "I refuse. I believe there must be another way." The Creator regarded the son with great sorrow and great longing. "This is the way, and you are already failing the test." A few others took to their feet and said, "Then we choose to fail too." The skeptical son looked at them with a flicker of appreciation, but not with any happiness. The Creator surveyed his charges. "If there are any others who choose not to take the test, you may say so now." A few others rose, and a spirit of defiance filled the space. Many of the other entities tugged on their metaphorical robes to pull them down. Messages of, "You don't know what you're doing," and "Stay with us," filled the space. The Creator looked sadly at them, knowing that this pattern had occurred before, and would occur again. So this is your choice. But you may no longer remain here. You must leave when your siblings do, and reside where I choose for you. But you will not have the same existence as the others." "I would not want that existence," cried the refusing one. He also had once been great, but no longer. He had been diminishing for some time. "And given the opportunity, I am sure I can convince the rest of them that they do not want that existence either. Whatever is the reward at the end of that test surely could not be worth the trial that comes before." The heaviness of his words sat upon them all. The Creator nodded slowly. "Then so be it. You may have the opportunity to try to convince them as they take the test." Many of his children regarded him with shock. How could he allow this? What would it do to the plan, the test? Others twisted to look at their nurturer, but she was smiling sadly and nodding at the Creator. "It will be well," he calmed them. "This," he gestured to the rebellious ones, "is part of the test." The cynical son looked with thinly veiled hatred at the Creator. "I will destroy you. I will destroy you all." Another son leaped to his feet, large in stature, and the Creator immediately turned to him, as did the nurturer. He was another great one. "No, you will not," he declared. "I will go against you there in that place." He struggled to find words for behaviors and places he did not yet know. Another son stood, close in size and temperament. They were always together, just as it should be. "And I will stand with him," the second announced. "I will protect him." The nurturer caught the Creator's eye. They must stay together, the first and his guard dog. "They will," the Creator sent the message back. "It is how it always is, the deliverer and his destroyer together." The nurturer's eyes glowed. "You will fail," shouted the refusing one at his brothers. "No, they will not." Up stood a daughter, and another, and a son, and another daughter, until dozens surrounded the brothers in defense. "We stand with them." The nurturer beamed. The Creator beamed back. "As it has been before." The refusing one scowled and stared at each of them. "I will remember you, and you, and you, each of you. I will find you, and I will come after you, and I will destroy you." "Enough," the Creator said. He did not yell or shout, just spoke, and the cosmos fell silent. He turned to the refuser. "You will leave now, and take those who wish to be with you. You can no longer remain here." The refuser glared at the very first, the greatest one among them, with the first look of loathing. Then he turned to the great ones who promised to defend them, and extended the same threat. But already he was leaving, with others following. They climbed over the feet of their siblings to follow him out of the testing center. Many of their family tried to pull them back, and others sobbed quietly. The nurturer covered her perfect face with her perfect hands and wept. Even though she knew this was coming, still she wept. The Creator sighed sadly and shed a few tears. He had hoped until the very end. They knew who would leave and who would remain. A parent knows a child's heart. A parent cannot and will not change that heart, but still weeps for it. But one who was leaving hesitated and looked back at the great ones. "Stay with us," they cried, and the hesitating one looked to the nurturer for guidance. She nodded gently. "Come back." Oh, how she loved this one who had always struggled, who had frequently doubted, but who had always tried anyway. Still he wavered, now bombarded on all sides by those telling him where to go. The deliverer and the destroyer beckoned him loudest of all. The Creator and nurturer locked eyes. If he stays, he will cause them so many problems. Yes, they will need many problems to solve. Finally, the hesitating one took a step back to his family. Cheers and cries erupted, and a few others returned from the refuser and came back to the great ones. Oh, they will have so many problems. As many as they need. The rebels left with those they still kept. The guard dog / destroyer wrapped an arm possessively around the brother who returned, oblivious to what future pain this one would cause him, but also not knowing what joy they would later, much later, share again. The Creator gazed with empathy upon his remaining children. There were far more that had remained than had left, but the empty seats scattered around the expanse filled him with grief. Even if only one chair was empty, he and the nurturer would weep for the one who was gone. He sighed deeply and smiled again. There was work to do. You who continue are my elect and my chosen. One of your brothers has already said he will take the test. And now I ask each of you, will you take the test? The Creator looked at the being in front of him. She nodded and smiled. I will. The Creator shared her smile and asked another son, another daughter, and all of them. Were time measured, attending to each would have taken decades. But since they had no time, he had each of their answers in no time at all. They all would go. All is prepared to begin the test. You, he gestured to the first great son who stood, will go at the first to help establish our way and to teach our families. And you, he gestured to the great daughter standing next to him, will also go at the first to nurture and mother those families. I will also need daughters and sons to begin with you. Who is ready to go down with me? The shout of jubilation reverberated throughout the cosmos, and a rush of souls came to him. The Creator smiled at his children, and his gaze stopped on two brothers and their siblings who had declared to fight the refuser. Your time will not be yet, he told them gently, and their hopeful expressions faded. I need great ones at the beginning, but also great ones at the end. I need those who can deliver and can sacrifice and can rescue and can destroy. They did not understand all that he told them. He knew they could not, but still they looked at him with renewed enthusiasm and willingly stepped back from those wishing to be the first families. They would be among the last families. The Creator caught the eyes of the nurturer again, who now stood with all of those who would wait. She would prepare them for their time in the world and welcome them home again. There was always a pattern. There were always roles to play. No soul was forced into one of millions of parts, but the test was about one thing. What part would each choose to play? The Creator smiled and sent a complicated wink to the nurturer that would have been interpreted by mortals as, hold down the fort, I'll be home for dinner, I promise. Mari winked back at Perrin. Author's note, 5 points. 1, a defense. 2, a reason. 3, the purpose. 4, John Offer wasn't supposed to be here. And 5, why there's a discussion about pie near the end of the book. Number 1, defense. Well, of course I got it wrong. What happens when we die? What happens in a few million years? I don't know. No one does. That's why this is a work of fiction and not a How to Get to Paradise book. I know there are a lot of people who will argue my take on what happens after we die. Go ahead. I expect discussion because, as Shakespeare put it, death is the undiscovered country, and we're all going to have a different opinion about what we will discover there. But please do not construe anything I've written here as doctrine from any religion. While I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, otherwise known as Mormon. While I borrow from that background, I also insert a great deal from the Gospel according to Trish, which is doubtless fallible and wrong, because the last time I checked, I wasn't a guide or a prophet. I've literally sat and thought for hours about how should it be when we die? And that's what I wrote here. I believe in God the Father and also Goddess the Mother, our nurturer. But in the Gospel according to Trish, her duties and focus are on our siblings who are in the spiritual realms. The earth is God the Father's domain, his job, and he's who we address in prayer. If we prayed to Heavenly Mother, I think she would sigh patiently and say, "Go ask thy father, that is his job. I am already busy with thy siblings over here." I believe our heavenly parents are more fair and loving and just and caring than any of us can fathom. What might our existence with such benevolent beings be? This book incorporates the best scenarios I could imagine, and therefore will be woefully inadequate, because I have a mortal mind, and it's banging the edges of its understanding that I get a headache trying to ponder it all. When I get to the other side, I'll likely smack my forehead and go, "Oh, that's how it should have been. Of course, I got that wrong. Can I go back and revise my book?" So please, if you have any issues with my idea of what happens after we die, or you believe something else, or your religion has taught you something else, great, not a problem. In fact, I want to hear your theories because I'm gathering them up. And when I die and get over there, I will pull them all out and make a chart. I am banking on the assumption that when I get to the other side, they will let me bring one piece of paper full of questions. On the top of the list is number 1, dinosaurs. What's the deal? Number 2, Atlantis. What's the deal? And so on. I will add all your speculations to my list and hope to find you so that we can compare notes. I'm expecting that you'll get there with a piece of paper too. On second thought, perhaps I should just commit the list to memory, because I have a feeling that there we'll remember everything with alarming clarity. See, I'm already revising. I did consult near-death experiences in my research as to what our next life may be like. But I'm skeptical about experiences that have been published and publicized because I wonder what the financial motivation may be to share such intimate and private moments. I either felt I was reading something sacred that shouldn't have been shared, or that I was being fed an embellishment that no longer resembled the original experience. I ended up not incorporating information from any of those. I've been intrigued, however, by a few accounts from the 19th century. Those rang truest to me, primarily because there was no gain to be gotten from the teller sharing details with a few select friends. I let my imagination play with those more seemingly pure accounts to augment my vision of paradise. I repeat again, this series is fiction, although it feels very real to me at times. It's all conjecture, and you may take it or leave it as you will. But you may ask, do I really believe that after a few million years of growth and learning and development, tutored by omniscient gods, that people like Perrin and Mari, and you and me, could in some eon be gods ourselves and start another similar cycle all over again? Yes, I absolutely do. Why couldn't we? What better future could any of us imagine? Sit and ponder that for a few hours, then let me know what you come up with. Number 2. The entire reason I started this series was because of one clear, stark image that popped totally unbidden into my mind, probably back in 2003 or maybe even earlier. I was in my backyard in rural Virginia, pulling out thorny bushes on a hot summer day. The image was of an old woman standing by herself in a sacred place like a temple, and seeing an entire army coming against her. She knew her grandson was among them, and she stood her ground, hoping he'd notice that she'd willingly sacrificed herself. The image so startled me that I quit pulling out the thorny blackberry bushes and instead stared into the forest behind my house, engrossed and fascinated for probably 15 minutes, just reveling in the scene, trying to draw as many details from it as I could until I could get no more. For years I wondered about that image because it frequently drifted back into my mind, usually when I least expected it. Who is she? What's happened? Why is she doing this for her grandson? I distinctly remember driving with my family in Utah a few years later, heading west out of Sardine Canyon with Brigham City just coming into view. Now you can see the Brigham City temple where I was looking, but back then it wasn't there. At that moment, emerging from the canyon, I suddenly knew there was a whole story about the woman, and I felt I needed to start writing it. I did, perhaps just a few days later, late in the spring of 2009. Because I'd never before written any fiction, and English majors rarely do, weirdly, it was going to be a short story. Yeah, really, a short story. I drafted 50 pages by early summer before I realized this woman had a husband. And for another 50 pages, he was some nameless guy in the background, along with his captain. A week or so later, I understood he was part of the story too, and I shelved nearly 100 single-spaced pages and started all over again. I hadn't yet typed one word about the nameless grandson. The short story was growing into a trilogy. Yeah, really a trilogy. And then they took it over. These nameless characters who wanted their stories known. And it took me about 14 months of constant writing, probably 50 to 70 hours a week, to finally get to the page where Mari stands at the temple, knowing her grandson young pair, yes, they eventually got names, is out there and hoping this act of self-sacrifice might get him where he needs to be. Talk about a tingly moment. I was shaking when I typed those pages, realizing I had come full circle and was going on to expand it. All in all, I drafted the entire series, a couple thousand pages, in about 15 months. I'm going to add here, also I had my 9th baby at the same time. Then I started revising, and that's taken a few years because while I'm a fast writer, I'm an excruciatingly slow reviser. Number 3. It wasn't until I typed the last words General Ralph Shin says to Pato that I figured out why I was writing all of this. But grandfather, I have a question. Sure, Pato. Why? Why did you have that dream? Give me this parchment. Why? Ralph gripped Pato's face with his hands. Why? To give you hope, Pato. Hope? That's all? Pato, hope's everything. This series was to give me hope, to give others hope, to give us all perspective. I started writing this series for personal reasons, as therapy and escape from situations I was going through. But since I've published, I've heard from others who say it's given them hope. And hope is everything, I've discovered on many, many occasions. Number 4. John Offra died before book 6, after Perrin sent him back to the world. He went around terrifying soldiers until one day he vanished. That's how it was written. Except Debbie Byer didn't like it. Debbie was a friend of mine from Virginia who later became a beta reader. But around book 4, she developed cancer, her second round of it. When her prognosis turned grim, she emailed me asking if I could tell her how the series ends, since she would not live to see it completed. Heartbroken, I spent many hours condensing the next 4 books into a few pages. Debbie approved of everything except for one thing. You shouldn't kill John Offra. That's wrong. Every part of me feels that's wrong. He has to live. But Debbie, I wrote back, he's supposed to die. It's in his name. Offra is sacrifice in Swedish. I don't care. It's wrong. Make him live. As the dying wish of a friend, make John live. How was I supposed to argue with that? It's not a simple task to weave a character into 4 books when he was already gone. Over the next many months, as I revised each book, I had to work him in, until suddenly he became very important. Debbie was right. His story was not over yet. And with each line I'd whisper, "Yeah, you were right, Debbie, you were right." John lived until the very, very end, when he died for about 10 seconds. I think Debbie would approve. In fact, I think Debbie wrote his story for me. Number 5. About the dialogue at the end of Book 8 where Mari and Perrin argue over pie. It may seem odd, but it was so vital, so it stays. I've broken so many rules in my novels already, it seems like it doesn't matter if I break a few more by sticking random conversations in wherever I feel like it. When I first wrote of Perrin's passing, it was less than 2 months after my sister Judy, Judith, died from cancer. She was the most dynamic, powerful, amazing woman I've ever known. And the fact that she was gone in 2009 tipped everything wrong. Her family struggled immensely. Her husband and children mourned deeply. After watching and experiencing that, I skipped ahead in the series' future and wrote about Perrin's dying over Thanksgiving break that year. I took all that raw sadness and converted it into words. Bad, bad timing. I was so despondent. It was the worst Thanksgiving ever. I sobbed. For fictional people, for real people, for myself. My sister would never know of my books. My parents didn't either. As I was writing, they were declining with memory issues, and both died a few years later without knowing what I was trying to create. After driving my daughter back to college on that Sunday after Thanksgiving, I was deep in thought on the 2-hour drive home, sorting everything and pondering about the next life. See, I told you, I spend hours wondering about what's next. The idea of Perrin and Mari reunited and resurrected and bickering about pie came to me. And by the time I reached home, I had thought through this whole little scenario. Even though it was late at night, I couldn't rest until I saw Perrin with Mari again. And I took that nugget of hope and thought about Judy and her husband and children together again. It may sound silly, but it felt marvelous to write them together. I sobbed all over again, but this time with hope for a future that is still coming. And that's why there's pie near the end of this book, because I'm sure there's pie in paradise. Meet me there, and we'll go looking for it, probably at Gazada's restaurant. The end.